My name is Andrii Nekoliak, and I'm a very fresh graduate of a doctoral program in political science at the Schutte Institute of Political Studies at the University of Tartu. When I finished my education back home in Ukraine, I wanted to get a foreign experience, experience of studies from abroad. This was all after Euromaidan events, and there was a whole wave of young people, young professionals deciding to go abroad to study, to receive new skills, new education, and come back. During my MA studies in Tartu, I signed up for a memory course by Heiko Paabo at our institute. And it was an absolutely fascinating experience of reading with very few students on reading on memory studies, discussing memory issues in scholarship, but also in broader society. And since then, I was compelled with memory politics as a research agenda, as a research topic to study. I investigated these patterns of memory law on two case studies of Poland and Ukraine, arguing and trying to understand why these countries or why the parliaments of these two countries engaged in lawmaking, in memory lawmaking, and why there was this difference in the intensity of memory law profiles and the proclivity to use particular memory law measures in the parliament. This was the first framework or the first component of my dissertation. The second component was to look into the events of so-called punitive memory laws, that is, the laws that punish instances of historical speech. So with the second component of the dissertation, I try to understand what happens in the parliament, why these laws on historical speech come around, why they are voted for, and what is the rationale for these laws in the parliaments. For study one, I formulated two hypotheses. So I try to understand what is more important, the politics of transitional justice or the politics of memory. So what I've tried to understand, what take precedence. One argument can be made for the case of politics of transitional justice, for saying that more lawmaking should follow in early legislatures after democratic transition occurs. The expectation is that the parliament votes for more memory law measures after being invoked. One of the findings of my dissertation was, as I mentioned before, it concerned this intensity of memory law profile. So what I discovered was that over time there is more memory politics comes in, and there is more memory laws voted by the parliament. So actually, in the beginning, after democratic transitions, very few commemorative declarations were voted by parliaments of Ukraine and Poland. But over time, during the third decade of politics in the parliament, much more were voted, and much more heated political discussion over memory was happening. Indeed, kind of the emblematic cases of first memory legislation in Europe concerned Holocaust denial legislation, which were enacted first in Germany and then in other countries of European Union or around Europe. When it comes to the example of Holocaust denial legislation, the argument that is being made for this type of memory law is that the historical event of Holocaust is so evil and tragic that modern liberal democracies should actually protect its memory or protect the historical validity of the event. The opposite position and the opposite tradition of legislation making would say that any memory law, no memory law should infringe on personal freedom or infringe it in a cumbersome manner, being, for instance, restriction on freedom of speech or other type of personal autonomy. I'm continuing with academic career with a postdoc position abroad.